You're listening to Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal with Matthew Taub.
All right, thank you for joining me today. My name is Matt Taub, and this is Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal. My guest today is the amazing Robbie Bent. Robbie Bent is the creator of Othership, which is both a brick and mortar facility as well as an app, and he'll explain it all to you. An amazing story, Robbie. I want to thank you for joining me today and joining our guests and joining our listeners, and thank you so much. So let's dive right into it. Robbie, let's dive right into the actual history. Let's go back to your story, where you actually started, and we'll take it from there on that journey, because I want people to understand that, you know, normal folk, you and me, everyday people, we're going on one trajectory and stuff happens. So let's start with that.
Sure. And like how far back? Childhood, high school?
Let's go. You were looking at your career trajectory. Like, you know, you're looking at where do we start, with building a life. You know, we can always talk a bit of the childhood, a bit that adds to some of the trauma, but let's go to where, you know, you finish university, where we have choices. So how do we choose the right place to go?
Yeah, so in university, I just wanted to make money. I was very driven by success. So, you know, my dad worked in business, and I thought, that's, you know, my parents were very much like, oh, you need to work hard. If you're successful, that's what makes you happy. I really liked nice things I saw in like high school and university. If I, you know, was able to work and get a nice car, maybe I'd have more friends or have nicer clothes, more girls would like me. And so I was very enamored by this idea of like being young, successful, working super hard, having money, and being able to like get things so people would like me. And so because of that, there's probably some insecurity or lack of self-love there. It was like, I'm going to fucking work as hard as possible. I want to do the thing where I make money the fastest. And so I really struggle with like stimulation, and we'll get into that as well, but like love, I can go and like work super hard. I can study hard. I can, like, the idea of a challenge or like grinding, you know, whatever it may be, is like, let's fucking go. And so I went to business school, didn't really even know what any of these careers were. It was like, saw the smartest kids wanted to be investment bankers. They made the most money. I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. That's my path. And so don't even really know what it is, you know. Still, like, to this day, I'm like, what is this thing? So I graduated from school. It's kind of like a realtor for like businesses, you know. Okay. And so you basically, like, the shittiest job. So you work all day. You just kind of sit at a computer pretending to do nothing and pretending to do something. And then at night, when the senior guys are leaving, they give you like 12 hours of work. So you're in the office from, you know, 9 a.m. until generally 2 a.m. almost every single day and the weekends. Goodness. But like, it's such a shitty job. Like, you're just building PowerPoints, doing Excel models, not really learning anything. And so I did that for a number of years. And during the financial crisis, the business folded. And so come into work one day, they're like, hey, you know, Lehman Brothers and all these banks have failed. And they're like, you know, this bank is done. You've lost your job. And it's like, oh, okay.
We're going back 2008, 2009.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was living in the US, and all of a sudden I had a visa, didn't have a job. I was just like, fuck, like, what am I going to do? There's no like zero finance jobs hiring in North America. And so I kind of looked around, and I saw the people I worked for, 40 years old, nobody really in shape. Nobody seems super happy. Everybody's in this job that, like, you're just grinding for money. I started to feel like maybe this isn't the greatest path. And so at that point in time, I then moved back to Toronto, and I still had this goal of like, oh, I want to get rich fast. And so I saw at the time, like, Facebook had been started, this thing Y Combinator in San Francisco had been started, and all these kids my age, and I'm 24, 25, were becoming entrepreneurs and making a lot of money. And it's just like, whoa, maybe I can skip all these steps and like start a business and some kind of tech business and get rich. Again, just didn't really know how hard it was. And so I start this tech business, the co-founder in Toronto, and we build this SIM card that allows you to use any network in the world when you're traveling, so you don't pay roaming. And so I was super naive at the time, just like, yeah, I can do this, I can figure it out, I'm super smart, like, let's go, we'll work really hard again, and not realizing like what building a startup takes. And so made a ton of mistakes, hired all these senior people, and it was going well for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And then that business, we just spent way too much money to build it. And over time, we had 100 employees at one point, and it's, we were selling this roaming solution, and the prices of roaming, for those who remember, it used to be like you'd use your phone overseas and it'd be $1,000. And, now like you just pay roam like home with Rogers. And so that business started to fail, had to fire all the employees. Personally, like, again, was in the situation where wondering about money, what am I going to do? These feelings of scarcity, business ends up failing. Lost everything. My parents and friends had invested. I had to move out of my apartment in Toronto, move back into my parents' basement. And that was like the lowest point of my life. And while this is going on, for these first two jobs, like, I've always struggled with, going out socially. I'd get social anxiety, but I would love to be out. And so I would drink. And then I started using cocaine in university, and then like really heavily when I moved back to Toronto. And so like every Thursday, Friday night, I would go out and, 2 drinks just would be casual wine on a date. And it would be like, oh, let's, I want to get some cocaine. And so then it would just be like, oh, I'll just do just a little bit and fine, whatever. And then, I would disappear for 2 days. And that happened for probably 4 or 5 years, pretty intensely, where like I wanted to stop, but just didn't know how. And so I was in this place of like, okay, I'm under immense amount of stress. I'm about to lose my job. I'm going to lose all these people money. I'm firing all these people. I don't know what to do. I don't have any practices. And I just like, my personality is very much, if I'm watching Netflix, I can watch like 150 shows in a row. If I'm if I'm ordering Uber Eats, it's like a French toast, a pizza, like 3, like I just am very, if I drink coffee, it'll be like 4 coffees. I have to be very careful with how I'm stimulating myself, because I just keep going.
That what's the word I'm looking for? The gratification, instant gratification, like right away it's there. I'm the same. Like when my coffee pot runs empty, that's it. There's no more coffee.
Yeah, and that's honestly, after 7 years of no alcohol and cocaine, I still have this problem with things. And so it's just part of my personality. And it does, though, also have some superpowers associated with that.
Right.
In terms of just intensity, ability to work, charisma, sales, like trying new things, not being afraid for adventure, all those things that are like it's almost like being manic a little bit at sometimes, like having this huge energy. But yeah, I just have to be really, really, really careful. And so that was the rock bottom point where I was like, okay, all my friends are pretty successful that I went to school with. I can't afford to go out for dinner with them. This is embarrassing. I'm like living with my parents. What do I, it just, it was really, really hard. It felt like I was especially because everything in my life was, oh, I'm successful if I have X. Like, what do I do and what do I have? Right. And I had no like self-love. And so combining that with addiction and like these days where I'd go, at that point it got really bad, where I had no job and I would just, like disappear in my house and like barricade the windows and like for 3 days would be like by myself doing drugs. And so it was a really dark moment.
Dark period. So how long that lasted? What, 6 years, 5 years?
So I was probably using alcohol and cocaine all through university. I stopped for a little bit when I was in finance, and then probably another 7 years of like intense, kind of every weekend drinking and cocaine. So probably for like a good 10 years in total. But so yeah, it was about like 7 years in, super heavy.
Yeah, and then it gets worse when you remember, like when you look at how much pressure you were under. We know that pressure does put a lot down. Then you got your business, you have other people's livelihoods because you're paying them, other people's money. So that takes its weight on. So you hit rock bottom. What was it that snapped? What was it that was I'm looking up literally from the bottom?
I just like every time I wanted to make something happen, it's funny because, okay, so my addiction, like when it wasn't like every day. And so when I wasn't using like Monday to Thursday, it would be this like climb to health, and I would be ultra healthy. Like, so weird. Like I'd be like, oh, I can't eat that whole, that white bread. It has to be whole wheat. Or I'm like measuring my macros and I'm going to the gym 4 times a week. And so I'm like healthy, but then, wouldn't sleep for 3 days and just drink and smoke. And so it was crazy how like the dichotomy. And then I was like, I can't ever gain any ground. And like every weekend would be like, fuck, I'm back in this Monday morning, like shivering in bed. I'd sleep for 2 days, sweat through the sheets, and just being like so sad, you know? And
Yeah.
so because it was such a yo-yo. And then finally by the Thursday when I'm feeling better, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go out again. And like, oh, you know, yeah, like fine, I can have a couple of drinks, no big deal. And then it's like, once you have a couple of drinks, you start to make the bad decisions. And it just didn't click for me that like, hey, I can't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
And that took a really long time to learn.
So when you learned that, did you do it on your own? Did you go to a program? What stepped you in that direction to go like, hey, I got to get out of this roller coaster yo-yo of Thursday to Sunday?
It took years. Like at first I was like, fuck, I really just don't want to feel this way anymore. Before the business failed, I'm like, you know, Monday going into work on no sleep, smoking cigarettes in my car, like with the window down, like showing up with like a red face and like, just fuck, I don't want to be this person. And so then I did a couple, like Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholic Anonymous. And that was really hard for me because the environment just made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And so like some of the meetings I went to just happened to be in like the basement of a church. It kind of felt a bit sketchy. And so I was like, oh, am I sick? And it just felt bad. And so that kind of didn't work for me. Then I tried therapy. And again, like just the talk therapy, it was nice to talk to somebody, but it wasn't like creating sustainable change.
Right.
Then I started like kind of being like, okay, well, I just need to get out of around my friends. Like this, it was clear like when I was at home with my parents, things were okay. And then as soon as I went out with friends, like every time it was related to social. Like I wasn't really going out on my own and like buying cocaine, doing it at my house. It would always be related to like being social and in a social event. It's like, okay, maybe if I move. So I'd heard, you know, I was reading Tim Ferriss and, you know, thinking a lot about like conquering fears. And it's like, I'm just going to move. And so I found an opportunity in Israel with somebody who had worked at my company. And I just moved out there on my own. I'm not Jewish. I don't speak Hebrew. I was like, you know what, this is going to be completely different, a chance for change. And so
that's awesome.
I went out there about 31. I lived there for a year. And while I was there, I was talking to someone at a bar, and I was, you know, interested in meditation, kind of always had been, was doing 10 minutes a day on Headspace and stuff like that. And somebody had mentioned to me about these long 10-day retreats. And it's thought, obviously my mind's like, whoa, that sounds hard. Fuck yeah. That's like, let's go, you know, like, let's see if I can do this thing. And I think what really helped me with addiction was I'm going to try and do the hardest things I can that are super intense, that almost scratch that itch for stimulation. But like, if I can conquer all my fears and be more uncomfortable, I can grow. So that was my like mantra from like around 30. And so I went and did this 10-day meditation retreat. It's 10 hours a day, completely silent. So it's 100 hours. So if you think of like, oh, I can't meditate, nothing's happening. That's most people.
Yeah.
And it's like, all of a sudden you're doing 2 years of Headspace in like 1 week.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I did that. And then that for the first time, I started to become aware, like, because you're not taking in any stimulation, all these crazy memories become so vivid from like your first date in high school and elementary school and with your parents. And started to realize like, whoa, why do I need money so badly? And like, why did I care so much what people thought about me? And it was like, before that, I was kind of on autopilot, like, wake up, try to make money, have your house, get nice things, have people like you, go for dinner, work, you know, and that's it. And it's just like, why? Never really thought about like why I was doing those things. And meditation was the first time, like that I kind of started to feel like, oh, these are pretty interesting patterns. And so at that retreat, I met someone and they were like, hey, there's this thing called ayahuasca. We're going to go do it. Do you want to come and check it out? It's kind of similar. Like, okay, I don't know what this is, but yeah, you know, let's do it. So I came back. I tried the ayahuasca. It was a pretty interesting experience. It was just like not a large dose, and you know, and there wasn't like much prep around it, and so powerful experience, but not like life changing. And then from that point on, I felt like I was still drinking, and I just felt like, wow, okay, I really want to change. I researched ayahuasca and found all these, you know, people talking about studies for addiction specifically. And then I got super interested, like, okay. And this was maybe 7.5 years ago now.
And so you were still drinking, not, it's like socially on the weekend type thing.
So what would happen is in Israel, I didn't know as many people. There wasn't the same access to cocaine, but like, you know, let's say once a month I would go out and like 3 drinks would get hit. And then all of a sudden it would be 12. And then I would like fall asleep under a bench outside like a nightclub, and it'd just be like, whoa, like, okay. But it wasn't every day, but it was like when I did, bad things would happen. And still, like, once in a while I would do drugs if they were around. So I moved back to Canada, found this, retreat online in Peru, and noticed like, hey, if you put effort and intention to this can become what I call like a pattern interrupt.
Okay.
So I go down to Peru, I do ayahuasca 4 times, prepare this intention, work with a therapist, and crazy stuff.
All this in Peru now. So
yeah,
you got from Canada to Israel for a year.
Yep.
Now you're back in Canada, and now you're down in Peru.
Yeah, so I would say it was what I was doing, like, I did the Vipassana, lived in Israel for about 9 months after, did the ayahuasca maybe 6 months after that, moved back to Canada, and was still like drinking, like, okay, like I'm not as bad as it was before, but it's not great. And still like have these, disappearances. And then found more about ayahuasca, go down to Peru with a friend. And at that time, people are like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're just going to do more drugs. And that's...
Right. And when people hear that, I just want to stop this. When people hear that in the podcast, when they hear about ayahuasca, there's so much misinformation around that as well, based on some media channels. And there's a lot of people who are concerned about it or curious about it and see it as just another drug. So, and
to each their own. Like, look,
yeah,
this path that worked for me it will work for others, and it won't work for others. And that's what I've learned about recovery is it's really just you as the individual, and like you are the only one who can make the change. And maybe you're ready, maybe you're not. So I don't even like to give advice because I don't know. I'm very humble in that. Like, look, here's something that worked for me and why. If you like it, go for it. If not, a lot of people who are in AA, they're really against, they look at this as like breaking their sobriety. And I've seen a ton of people come and say, hey, I'm really interested in psychedelics, but I'm worried about my sobriety. Everything's going really well now, so I don't want to put it at risk, which is totally reasonable.
And that's the biggest thing about recovery, because there are different channels. There's AA, there's therapy, there's ayahuasca, there's so many different avenues. And listen, there are even people who just wake up one morning and they're done, right? Which boggles my mind because that wasn't my route, and I tried the AA and it just wasn't for me. I didn't get into, again, I go to a church basement and it seemed like the opening. Remember the movie Joe versus the Volcano? You walk in, it's that like fluorescent lights and it looks dark and dim, and it was just like, this is not going to get me out, so I get it. So, and again, to each their own, and to say, to each their own. So go on, sorry.
Yeah, so I'd say for people interested in psychedelic medicine, the way I look at like, think of it like a triangle with substances, and you have like chase, and that's like the worst one. And that's, heroin, cocaine, that feeling of like, I need more. Yeah. Alcohol can be in there also. Then there's escape, and alcohol's really in this one. And this is like a numbing out, benzos, painkillers, stuff like that, where it's just like, I want to escape from my reality. Alcohol is like the main one for this. It's like the Friday night I'm working, like
self-medicating drug.
Exactly. And then there's explore, and I put psychedelic medicines in this altered state of exploration. And so you never, I wouldn't say never, but very rarely would you take a hero's dose of like psilocybin mushrooms and the next day be like, oh, I can't wait to do that again, or I need more. They're very challenging. They're shutting down parts of the brain, bringing up traumas that you're working through in the body and letting go. And so I've had times where, I was in my 4-year-old self the very first time I was being yelled at and feeling fear, and my body just shaking, letting that fear go. And it's like taking you back to things in your life, like moments of rejection, moments you did something you're not proud of and are guilty and ashamed, and like facing them and feeling into them. And so it's not something that's recreational in the same way where it's, oh, let's do it again. And so for me, just really struggling with stimulation, being careful with things like coffee now, cigarettes, stuff like that. I've never had a pull to psychedelic medicines in 7 years, and probably have used them 50, 60, 70 times and never have had a problem. And then the damage they can do to your body, it's not like alcohol where one, it's super damaging, but two, you lose control of your critical thinking and then stack things on. Generally with psychedelics, you're using a blindfold and sitting, and then you feel significantly better after.
It's guided, right?
It can be. I mean, that's like, if you're listening and wondering, there's plenty of resources online. The best thing is to find an experienced psychotherapist and guide, either on retreat or underground. But yeah, for me, when I work, I like to do therapy in advance, set an intention. So the one in Peru was like, hey, I don't want to drink alcohol ever again. And then use the psychedelic medicine in a set container, generally with one guide. Sometimes ayahuasca is done, like we just did a retreat for fatherhood with 15 of my friends. I just became a dad.
Yeah, they do it in groups.
And it's in group, but it's not recreational. You're generally blindfolded. You're in your own zone. You're going through and processing your own things. And then after, I like to follow it up with a bit of therapy as well. And so that's what happened that first time in Peru. It was really challenging. Like, things in my body, fears that I didn't know existed, times I'd been bullied, the first time I'd ever smoked a cigarette because I thought it was cool, and then how I associated substances with like being cool. And that kind of was shown to me as like, whoa, well, you're 30 now. Is this like still cool? Like, is that what's driving, like your 14-year-old self that made this decision? Is that what's still driving your processes now? So it was really interesting. And when I came back, I just felt I had this willpower I'd never been able to tap into before. And for 6 months after that retreat, I was just like, okay, my goal is 1 year of sobriety. I would take it down on a notepad. And again, sober for me just means no alcohol and cocaine. Yeah. There's other things that I can have that I can deal with. But yeah, for a year I would take down like no cigarettes, no alcohol, no cocaine. And like look at the months. And I met my wife during that time. And awesome. I just felt she really helped me. And we can talk about that after. But the power of the psychedelic medicines gave me a window where I could make change. Right. But on that point, I've had like tons of friends use these medicines, and generally, there's a 3-week, month, 2 months golden period. And if you don't make change in your habits, same friend, same job, a lot of times people go back to the habit. So I don't think it's a silver bullet. I think it's one tool that you can use in your arsenal, and it's an ongoing battle. Like 7 years in, I'll still have nostalgic moments of, drug use and partying and stuff like that.
You put a bunch of sober people in a room, they've got some of the funniest, best stories they'll tell forever and ever, right? Everyone looks at us like they're crazy, but we have the best stories, which is why everybody always wanted to hang out with us, which I always found very funny at the same time. But yeah, so it's so far, you've gotten this far, and again, there are different things for different people, right? So I want to make sure whoever's listening to this that, we're not promoting anything other than your sobriety, but your challenges, but also where, we came from. There's lots that build up, and by realizing and seeing, no matter what therapeutic approach you take, we've got so much packed childhood stuff, right? That we just kind of throw back there. And then in order for us to move forward, like you said, if you're not making the changes within 2 or 3 months, you have a dead tool, right? You've got to pretty much these are just tools to help you progress and make the change. And if we're not making the change, we're not moving forward. So
I think it's like also just knowing your genetics and your body. And so the more you do this stuff, the more you realize, like, look, this is just me. Like, I love stimulation. I'm not a person who's relaxed. So how can I take that and use tools that like give me an outlet in a healthy way? And where do I have to be careful? And like, I'm just different than people. And so many people are, and so it's like, what works for you? You really got to sit and think and like try all these different things, because I also saw like, for 5 years I tried and it just didn't work no matter what I did. Yeah. And then there's also like a 1 step forward or 2 steps forward, 1 step back, kind of mentality where you're like, you think you've overcome something and you haven't. And it's just I guess what I want to get across is for people not to get discouraged, because it can take like 10 years of like going 2 steps forward and slipping back. And it just is a never ending battle. And it's really hard to change who you are. So it's more taking who you are and then like putting in guardrails so you can succeed.
Right. And the biggest thing I've, you said a few times here that I've been taking up is that recovery is just not about stopping something. There's reasons why we do certain things. Everything you've approached, you try therapy on your own, which was great to talk. But this was therapy with something, something else, and then you added the therapy to help you talk you through what you've gone through, which is really the tool that we all need is it's not just talking. Talking's great. I'm all for therapy. I think, I went to therapy for years. I remember when, near the end of that years long journey with that therapist, they said, so, you're not cured, but like, you don't have to come every week. And I was panicking. I'm like, well, who am I going to talk to then? Like, that was and that actually became part of my own crutch, right? Where, okay, now I've got the tool, my tool's talking. Well, how do I go forward with this tool? So learning what it was that caused, for me, it was alcohol, and it was self-medication. Like you said, it was my escape. I needed to numb it out. Figuring out, okay, why, it wasn't just stopping it, because then every problem was still there. It was realizing and figuring out what the problems were that I was numbing myself out from, right? And realizing that you can move forward, but learn it, know it, understand it, and then throw it away.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So it's like you come back, and this was interesting. So I come back from the ayahuasca, I'm sober. I met it's my girlfriend and now my wife and mother of my son, and she's super into health and wellness, and I had that support. And then I was able to maintain it, but I saw a number of friends, probably 10, who were like, I want to quit using Coke, and I've done the ayahuasca, and I feel amazing, and I'm coming back, and I'm fucking on fire, and let's go. And then 3 months later, like, the changes that were hoped for didn't stick. And so I started thinking, like, okay, well, why is this stuff working for me? And so for one, I had a really good meditation practice daily from that like 10-day retreat. I learned to meditate. I was like, okay, this is helpful for my intense like ADD mind. I had a wife who was like a girlfriend at the time, extremely supportive, and she was healthy as well. It's like, okay. And then something else really interesting that we would do is we would go to these bathhouses. And on our first date, she was big into, Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield. And she said, hey, like I heard about this ice bath. I think you'll probably like it. It's like super good for you. We do a Google search. We find this place in Mississauga that's still around called Southwestern Bathhouse. And that was our first date. And so we go, we do the sauna, we do the cold plunge, no phone. Any like social anxiety I would normally have and like turn to alcohol for was instantly gone post cold plunge. And what was happening, it blows my mind. And it's still like, a lot of people talk about cold plunges. You'll see athletes, Wim Hof, like, oh, resilience, good for your body. And it is, but it's also boosting neuroepinephrine and dopamine. These are the two neurotransmitters, one for like mood, attention, vigilance. So like, whoa, I'm here and I feel alive. And then the ice bath actually has a bigger dopamine boost than coffee and cocaine. And then there's like a ton of research around this. Right. Andrew Huberman has a great podcast. And so if you are struggling, like what happens with dopamine is, I'm doing Coke, cranking my dopamine receptors, and they become more immune. And so you need more and more and more. And then it becomes difficult to even be happy in normal life without massive stimulation. Right. So the ice bath increases dopamine, but increases your sustained levels. So neurologically, you're like in this space. You're like, whoa, I feel fucking amazing. I have no social anxiety. I'm not on my phone. I don't need alcohol. I'm like alive. And you're repatterning your dopamine receptors. And so I'd seen like the psychedelics and the meditation worked for me, but were not working for my friends. Meditation was too hard to learn. Psychedelics are like pretty inaccessible. You need to go to Peru. They're expensive. And like, it's not like something you do all the time because it's quite scary. Right. So now I'm like, whoa, I'm in this ice bath. I'm like, this is awesome. And like, what I realized was you actually, when you come back, you need fun, you need community, you need a sense of play. And so you can't just go, like, if you're like, hey, I'm not drinking anymore. Okay, well, does that mean you can go to a sports game, a comedy show, a movie, like a bar, all those things, a restaurant, you were drinking. And so if now you're not drinking, you're not going to those things, how do you even have fun? And for me, like from 21, fun was like fucking, nightclub, dancing,
you're
let's
going
go.
out.
And so now I'm 30, I'm not doing this stuff anymore. It's like, what do I do for fun? And so I felt like lonely, and then and I think that's when a lot of people try to quit. They don't fill that gap with something fun. And so that was the big realization, was like, okay, I still need stimulation and I still need fun and being social. And the bathhouse was just something that like, kind of, so me and my wife, every week we went for like 7 years. Like we lived in San Francisco, we lived in Berlin, we would go to a bathhouse, we'd go to conferences, we'd bring everyone. And that was the main thing, was like how I used to slip was, I've been sober for a month. I'll just go out to this birthday. I'll have one drink, fine. And then, disappear for 2 days. And so now I had this tool where like, okay, well, I'm not even going to go to the bar. Let's all go to the bathhouse. And I'm getting that stimulation from the ice bath and the sauna. I feel great, fall asleep, and it's over. And so if I have that craving now, boom, ice bath. And that's worked for me now for like seven years.
And then what you were just about to say it before, you go in there, you're in the ice bath. I heard it almost on your tongue where when you come out, you're different. Your body, your wiring is different than your cell structure is different than when you went in. Like everything kind of changes once you're in that bath.
It's amazing. So there's a ton of things happening. So one is that norepinephrine boost. So you feel like you had a cup of coffee. Like it's a funny joke. I wouldn't normally say it on a podcast, but because it's about recovery, it's like nature's cocaine. Like that's, 100%. It's like you just come out and are like, fuck, I feel amazing. And like, what is going on? And you're in a state of like pure meditation and focus where the thinking mind, all your to-do list, all that shit's gone. You're just like, whoa, I'm here in my body. The other thing you're teaching yourself is to put your body into fight or flight state. So you get in, immediately you're breathing. Fear, like fear response, locked in. And this happens every single time you do it. You get better at mastering it, but every time, that same response. And what you're teaching yourself is, when I'm in fight or flight, how do I use my breath to control my nervous system state? And why that's interesting is because, you're walking down the street, someone cuts you off. Oh, fuck this guy. You want to scream at him. You're at work. Somebody says something via email. You want to, customer complains. Your kids are yelling at you. You want to lose your temper. You get embarrassed. You're stressed. All of those are fight or flight states. And so what the ice bath teaches you is to practice for those. Because generally once you're angry, you've already reacted. It's very difficult to practice in the moment. So the ice bath, you're going in, first 30 seconds, like, whoa, what's happening? I feel like I'm going to die. As you said, this is nuts. And then through slow, deep breaths, long exhales, and breath retention, you can move your nervous system into what's called rest and digest, the parasympathetic state. That's a state where we are relaxed, where we laugh, we have sex, we feel love, we feel emotions, where we eat. And so you're teaching your nervous system, training it, how to move from this like overwhelmed state into this rest and digest. So you come out, you feel super focused, relaxed, alive. You're in a perfect state. Then you also conquered your fear. And so you're like, oh, I want to talk to people. I want to share. And so you're in a perfect social environment to kind of like hang out.
Yeah, it was great. So we'll talk a bit more about what you're doing now at that. But the first time when I was at your space and I did that, and we were talking about before, I remember standing outside the ice bath, just looking at it, thinking like, there's no way. Fully talking to myself, I'm like, I hate cold. I don't go out in the winter. Like this is not happening. I used to work at a summer camp years ago that the lake was glacier fed, and I remember saying to the camp director, I said, hey, I know I'm the waterfront director, but if there's an emergency and I have to go in, I quit. It's cold. So here I am staring at this ice bath. My wife's on the other side, and just looking at it. I'm like, it is so cold, that water. The ice isn't even melting. Like, this is cold. I remember getting into the first time. When I say the first time, because it was the first time, and 20 minutes later, I was right back in. And there was that difference. Like you said, once I calmed down that first time, I would say the first time, my shoulders were up, my arms were up. There was no way I was getting all the way in there. And then when I went back 20 minutes later and it was, hey, get in, breathe in, right in. And it's not just everything that you're getting out of that, but when you're done, even when I was in there, it was that sense of accomplishment that made it even that much better. Like, oh my God, not only did I do 2 solid minutes in this freezing bath, I was actually able to relax my body. I stopped, my teeth stopped chattering. I was just fully in that meditative state, which I do know how to meditate. So I actually got into that zone, and it was amazing. Like, bouncing off the walls, being able to talk to everybody in the room afterwards. And it's funny, I think about 3 hours later, I was fully ready to go to bed. Like, it was so good. But I felt so, cliche to say maybe, I felt so alive when it was done that you can see that that's something that, we could do almost every day. My wife, let's do this again. So you've got that. This is what you've discovered with your girlfriend, now wife. So where are you now? Where did that take you to? With everything you've been through, you've opened up your own companies, you worked for a bank, you've seen success and failure, you've seen the drive. for money, money, money. Now you're here. So
yeah, after that, I was kind of back in Toronto, sober now, and from all this work, the psychedelic medicines, meditation, the therapy, started to realize like, okay, well, I'm just trying to make money like that. This has not been successful outcome. Maybe there's a different way. And so I decided like, well, you know what? I'm going to now try to be around really smart people and just kind of like be around people who are excited and aim for something different. And so I got into crypto. A friend of mine who I went on the ayahuasca retreat with was living in San Francisco. He's like, hey, there's this thing, Ethereum. You should come check it out. And so I asked my girlfriend, we were dating maybe 6 months, like, hey, would you come to San Francisco with me? And she said, yeah. And so we just packed a suitcase. We moved there. I started doing all these events for Ethereum and then ended up getting a job there, getting paid in ETH. And this is when it's, kind of just starting out super early on. And now I'm working around all these amazing people in tech, some of my heroes, people I read books about, and starting to make a lot of money and like feeling super good. And it was the goal of like, that wasn't even the goal anymore. It was just like, I'm really happy. I feel confident with my wife, my girlfriend who loves me so much. I just feel I don't care about material things. I'm like really just being around good people, and it made a huge difference. And so that lasted for 4 years. And so I was living in San Francisco and Berlin and all these crypto hubs. And then finally we were like, okay, like we'd been living out of one suitcase each where we would move every 2 months. And we probably moved like 25 times. And we're just like, fuck, this is at first it's exciting. And then it's like, okay, new country, new language, new gym, like apartment, Airbnb. Oh, it just felt so burnt out. And so we wanted to move back to Toronto because my wife's family lives nearby. And so we moved back to Toronto, and I was really worried. Very scared because the last I was in Toronto, I was an addict, and my friends like nightclubs, partying, all that stuff. And I just spent like 4 years super healthy around all these entrepreneurs that inspired me, made a bunch of money, was like feeling really good about where I was at, really dialed in my health, meditating, all those things. And so I came back here and was scared. And so my wife and I had this idea with 3 of our friends why don't we like make a little health community? And so we built an ice bath and put it in the backyard of our house on Geary Street. Right. And it just kind of became hey, if you know, open the back door, use the ice bath for free. And if you can, we make a WhatsApp group, and all of a sudden like 20 people a day would be dropping in. I'd be having coffee outside, meeting all these new people. Every night we would have a fire pit going and an ice bath, and like just when the grocery store, hey, you should come by at my gym. Hey, you should come by. Like just asking friends and like nearby people and just kind of teaching them. And this is like 4 years ago now, so it's Wim Hof, all this like ice bath on Instagram. It's not around. People are like, what are you doing? This is weird. But like, okay, fine.
Why are you going to an ice bath? It is to a lot of people, it's weird. Yeah. Today, even with everyone knows, I tell people what we do, and it's weird.
Yeah. So this is like, okay, well, I'm like in the backyard of this guy's house. Like, they got these weird sauna hats on. They're playing sound bowls. And what we realized is like, okay, we need to find a way to get people through this because it's intense. And online, it's just like, Wim Hof, like, get in, be resilient. We're like, okay, wonder if we can make this a more pleasant experience. So we started adding things from our meditation practices, essential oils, sound bowls, all kinds of different stuff, intention setting, and realizing that once you're in that ice bath, you're actually in a meditative state, and you can do subconscious programming, and it's like a really powerful place for programming. And it went from way beyond, oh, this is for athletes or for recovery, which it is, but to, hey, this is for anyone to kind of let go of stress and be present. And I saw so many. That's when like this light bulb clicked where I saw, lawyers and bankers and engineers and these like hardcore non-spiritual people like for the first time be like, holy fuck, I was thinking about my daughter and like I love her. And I was like, whoa,
right.
This is fucking awesome, And so winter comes and we're like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do. I've got all these people coming. We got this WhatsApp group, a few hundred people. So we kind of, I had this freestanding garage that was just like a woodworking space. And so we kitted out with like a cold plunge, a sauna, tea room, and we just open it to the public with like a Google sheet where you like put your name down when you want to come. And I'm still working for Ethereum, but that, for me and my co-founders, we would just take one night each where we would work there. And sure enough, it starts to do like 20, 30, 40 people a day. And the community grows to 1,000 people. And we're like, holy shit,
And this is in your backyard garage.
Yeah, in my backyard garage. So there's just like an entry. It's still open to this day. So if people are interested, they can DM me to kind of go check it out. But it's, just you go through this like little gate, you open this garage, no windows, and then it's like this kind of like mini oasis. And it's like a private space now. But yeah, so we see in that space, like 4 people are coming, 6 people are coming, sauna, plunges, they're starting to date, they're going on trips together, they're becoming friends. Every night it's like a vibe in there, people hang out, and we're like, whoa, I think this is like, we're onto something here of like making a cool bathhouse. And then COVID hit, and we were like, because we were looking at building a bigger one, and we were just like, fuck, I guess we can't do this. And so we actually just left it open privately. So we moved from staff to like an app, and you just let yourself in. And so during COVID, it was one of the only things you could do. And, we honestly were like, this is for people's mental health. It's a risk to us to stay open, but from a like fine standpoint, but like we have this community, people are struggling, let's just do it. And so every day, like 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, no overlap. You could come and use it alone or in your social bubble. And it really built a solid community of trust and people feeling like, wow, this space like saved my life. It's the only thing I can do. And then we noticed like, wow, maybe we don't have to build like a Scandinavian bathhouse. People are just coming for 1 hour to this space. And like, maybe you don't need 10 saunas in a restaurant. And it's just 1 sauna, 1 ice bath, 1 hour. And so we're actually the first in the world to build an experience that's almost like fitness, where you go for 1 hour.
Right.
And then the other thing we learned was that you can do classes around these things. And so people would come and we would be like, oh, just for fun, let's do a couples session for Valentine's Day. My partners, Harry and Amanda, designed it. And we'd have people do an eye gaze and then come out and give each other a hug when they're shivering to warm each other up. Then in the small sauna, each person would share about their first date, and then they would do a guided massage. And it was like, whoa, like there's not many things you do where there's no phone and you're paying attention. And in a sauna,
you're directly present.
Exactly. So it's perfect. And you've just done this ice bath, so you're so aware. So it's actually the perfect place to do a mental health style class. And so that kind of was like a big light bulb. And we realized like, oh, maybe we could add in breath work and stretching and all, different vocalizations and fun stuff. And so this idea was born that like, oh, maybe we could do sort of a Barry style, or Soul Cycle style class, but focused on mental health topics.
Right.
And so there's a big idea of like, okay, COVID vaccine comes out. We sign this lease downtown, right in the heart of the entertainment district. Like, we're going to put this wellness thing right on King Street. And so we do that, and we were unsure, like, are people actually going to do this? Like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night? Are they going to do this as their new night out? And like, maybe, but we don't know. And it was pretty scary to sign the lease during COVID.
Yeah, like, it's exciting for a minute, then you sign it, you're like, okay, now I'm like on the hook.
Exactly. And then we were also like, are people really going to want these classes? Like, it's one thing that we do it, we're pretty weird and kooky. And then like, are people going to want to do an anger release class? And that to me was the biggest, like, normal people who've never done any mental health practices, who haven't done therapy, who don't even know they're looking for this, will come in and do an anger release session where you bring up a moment of anger, the lights go out in the sauna, and everyone screams to get it out of your body. And they're like, wow. Like,
wow.
I didn't know I needed that, but this is, I've never, I get comments like, I've replaced an $800 therapy bill with an Othership membership. And not to say it's a replacement, but it's just a really interesting, and it's a really interesting way that for an accessible price point in community, you can go and work on like what we call emotional regulation. And it's very new for people because I don't have to admit I'm struggling. I don't have to talk to a therapist and share. I can do it in a cool space. And it's the exact opposite of my AA experience where I went to the basement of a church. It's like, right. I'm going to this space where I feel like I'm at a boutique hotel or some inspiring thing, but I'm doing the same practices there. And that to me it's almost, you're providing this new thing that feels as cool as a bar or nightclub, but then it's for healing. And healing is maybe the wrong word, but it's for like feeling better about yourself and your life. And you don't have to admit anything to go, and you can still have fun. And so all those things together, I've seen so many people who are struggling with like addiction to their phone and work and burnout and fatigue and all these things. Addiction is one, like, coming. And it just makes my heart's like feels so open that like how many people, like, I think this is the missing link to helping a lot of people maintain their behavioral change.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, like when my wife and I went there, and it was from the start, we walk in and it felt like that boutique hotel style. Like I'm going into the cool place, right? My wife and I don't go to the bars. We don't go to the clubs. So here we are, Saturday afternoon, walking into this place, and it was like, and we didn't know what to expect at all. Like trying to explain to my wife, I'm like, okay, so this is what it is. And she's like, what do you mean? So we're doing a class. I'm like, yeah. So like with other people, we're going into a sauna with like other people. I'm like, yeah, but we start off in this room where there's tea and other people. Like, well, she's like, I don't understand. I'm in a bathing suit and a towel with total strangers, and we're just hanging out, sweating together. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing. And it was so enlightening. This is number one, the social aspect of just, and I think it's part of the way you designed it. It is a smaller room, which kind of forces everyone to get a little bit closer. That's how we saw it. And it was just it forced conversation where it's also like, you're literally right on top of somebody next to you. You kind of have to say hi.
Yeah, we designed it that way on purpose. So we use stadium seating because it's known to create better connection where if you're flat, you can only be beside so many people and you're eye to eye. And this way it makes you feel more comfortable. We designed the lighting specifically. It's generally a red hue because it increases safety in the brain. It also makes people feel more comfortable. So there's no natural light in the space. It's all this red lighting. We designed the space you said small. It's very nooked. And so what I mean by that is like there's nowhere you can it's not like a gym where everything's open. You look around, you can see everybody. Because people are in their bathing suits, we want them to feel comfortable. So it's all these little intimate nooks with the idea that you can feel comfortable in your body no matter how you feel. Because a lot of people don't feel comfortable being in a bathing suit in front of people. So, we sell these amazing ponchos and these towels that you can wrap around your body if you feel uncomfortable. So the whole place is designed. You said it. It's like you want to feel like safe and secure.
Yeah.
So you feel in there, it's like immediately cozy. There's a fire when you go in, and so the whole space is meant. The smells, every little detail is meant to make you feel safe because you're going into something quite intense.
Absolutely, and even with the whole, because people are mindful of their bodies, and some people worried about, they had their own insecurities along with it. I can say that when we were there, there were definitely different body types throughout the entire space. But I couldn't tell you specifically what those body types were because that wasn't the focus on what anybody was looking at.
I think a lot of people too are like, if you're first time or first couple times, you're just thinking about like, fuck the ice bath, like what's it going to be? It's like that's all you're thinking about is the fear of it.
And it was you walk in and it was like, okay, I go to the right, the sauna, I got that. But even that was just new because you hand the towels out and there was so much more because usually you sit in a sauna and you just wait. Right. This was all of a sudden, a big room full of people. We're singing. There's words. It was a nightclub / meditation / I'm feeling good. And my wife and I, we noticed other people. We noticed ourselves. I noticed my wife, but I noticed I was there for me, even though we were together. So it was a great. And then again, the fear of just rinsing off at the cold bath was a whole other, but even that was so amazing. I looked at it where, knowing your story, knowing the recovery behind it, how it helped you get there. But this isn't, your space and the ice bath. So it's not just for recovery, right? I want to make sure that that's not although we talk recovery on the podcast, that this is for anybody and everybody, like to reset and to move forward into a better you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to look at it is everyone exercises, super common. I go or wants to exercise, has the motivation of I should exercise. And it's like, I go to CrossFit or F45 and I post a picture and I'm like, fuck yeah, I hit my PR. I'm like, I did it. I feel good about myself and I want people to know and like, yeah. But for mental health, there isn't the equivalent. And so it's not like, oh, I went to the therapist today, did my gratitude exercise, I'm killing it. Right. But like, that's what it takes. Like our mind is in a society where we wake up, we check our phone, we're on social media, most likely we're checking emails, dopamine hit. Even if you have no problems with addiction, it's a tough way to live? What are we doing for our brain to provide positive thinking? And so this is the first classes that are really like fun and geared the same way fitness for the body. This is for the mind and for your emotions. So you go into the space and you're hot, you're cold, amazing benefits for the body, but those neurotransmitter boosts and then the meditative exercises you're doing, like you leave, you might have done, we have one where it's a rose, thorn, bud session. And the rose is you think about the best moment of your day, really breathe it in. Wow, that feels good. You think about the worst moment of your day, what you're struggling with, let it go. Then you think about the bud, which is your intention for the next day. And so just little meditation practice that you do and you leave feeling like, yeah, I had a really good moment today and I'm struggling and, tomorrow I hope for this. And so just giving people, like that's a cool exercise, but in your normal day, you're probably not doing anything, right? Like no journaling, no meditation, none of these practices. And so to go in, have them guided, do something good for your body, but then feel better. Some of the classes I'll cry. Like I went in to a Friday Night Fever one and it's a class with dancing. So you're kind of moving around, you're breathing. And then, at the end of the class, there's some where everybody's throwing snowballs to each other and like connecting with eye contact. And then it's like, hey, if you feel called, come down on the floor and dance. And people are dancing. And it's just like, this is the most fun. Everybody's smiling and people are sober and happy. And so it's just such a nice, there's so many things you can do with it, but I just look at it as like a new social experience that's working through your emotions.
That's amazing. And socially, working through your emotions socially, I'm used to and you were used to working through your emotions socially by suppressing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we were still doing it socially. We were just suppressing the emotions. Now we're letting those out with other people, and we're in that state of the world now where we've normalized mental health. We can talk about mental health. We can say, and not everyone's doing it, but it's not as taboo as it used to be. Now, if somebody's not used to meditation or they're not in Toronto, they can't get to Othership, how else can they start meditating? What else can they do?
So another thing we did during the pandemic, we started offering online breathwork classes just on Zoom to our community, and 100 people, 200 people, 500 people. And people started asking for the recordings, so we put the recordings online. And people were saying, "Hey, I'm doing these every day. Can you put them in an easier to use thing?" So we built a course. And then people were like, "Oh, the course, it's just okay. Like I want to use it every day on my phone. Can you make an app?" So we built this app. And the whole goal of the app is kind of to be like Headspace or Calm, but to be easier to access.
Right.
And so if you think of meditation, it's about inquiry, noticing your thoughts. So for most people, you sit down, you're like, I'm not doing this right. Nothing is happening. This is boring. Okay, I spent 10 minutes, nothing happened. I'm going to quit. And 99% of people, if that's you right now, like you tried Calm or Headspace and then you quit, that's everybody. And so, it's just a hard practice to pick up and it takes a long time to see benefits. And so breathwork is the opposite. You are using your breath to change your state. And like we mentioned before in the plunge, you can push the gas pedal, using your breathing. So you can use it to actually create a fight or flight state that mimics coffee just through fast, rapid breathing. You can use your breath to push the brake, move into rest and digest. So after work, before bed, you're having tons of thoughts, long, slow breathing, breath retentions. And then you can also, over time, 15, 20, 30-minute sessions, you can breathe in specific patterns that help you to explore, that help to shut down the part of your mind with your inner critic and all your thoughts and process emotions. And you can have psychedelic-like experiences just through your breathing. And it's because of changes to blood oxygen levels in the brain. Your whole sense of self, your sense of time, you can change everything. And it's like, if you've never tried this before, a 30-minute session on our app, crazy the level of experience you can have. And so we found we really wanted to build something that, felt like fitness, was listening to really good music, and I just breathe along with the patterns and create that physical change. And for people who struggle to meditate, it's a really nice way to listen, at home, on an app, and there's tons of classes. So there's ones to boost you in the morning, like a coffee. There's ones to help you get to sleep. And then there's ones that I do like once a week for emotional releases, very similar to the sauna. So anger release, guilt release, if you're struggling with, a breakup, a change in job, imposter syndrome, you got in a fight with your partner, you just want to clear out your emotions once a week. And so I'll put it on every Sunday morning, 30-minute session on the app, and I'll listen and just breathe along to the music and have a beautiful emotional experience. So the app was created just out of this need provide programming, additional programming to people. The other cool thing is we actually do these breathworks live at this space called Jaybird, and we have breathwork concerts. And so we'll have 100 people come out, and it's the same ethos as Othership, where it's a social night out, kind of like a concert, but you're using your own breath to create the state change instead of alcohol or drugs. Again, in community, working through emotions, but awesome music. So that's something super fun too that people can access either the app virtually or if they're in Toronto through Jaybird.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. Now you're here. So we've come the gamut here. We've gone from here to here. So I love the fact that, you had your jobs, you had addiction, you had your substance abuse, and how it didn't go away overnight. It wasn't like it wasn't a quick 12-step program or a 3-week intensive. It was years for you to figure out what you needed. And that's what people don't realize. And that's whether it's a substance abuse or it's just you in general with emotional trauma, whatever the baggage we carry and how we deal with it, that it took you time to deal with it. And this is just one, along with the ayahuasca and the psychedelics to help you through that understanding, along with therapy guidance. And now we're here at Othership and meditation, breath work. How do people find you other than in person in Toronto through the app? Like this, to me, is something that we need this on every street corner, right? So where are your next steps? Where are you going from where you were, in your parents' basement? Where are we headed now?
Yeah, so money was really important to me, and through Ethereum was able to do pretty well. And so recently bought my dream house with my wife, we've got a baby. And so now I'm just super focused on getting this, and then went from had some financial success. Now I want to build, I quit Ethereum, I do this full time. And it was building something that I'm super passionate about that I use every day that made a huge change for me. And where I see this going, we just completed a fundraise. We're opening a second studio in Yorkville. We're opening 2 studios in New York. So next year we'll have a minimum of 4. And the goal is to build this, kind of in every city, eventually to franchise. So we're just figuring it out now and working every day, all day long on it. And what I really want to build, I see as a platform where you come to the space once a week with a group. You start coming a lot. You've been 25 times. You and your wife are well, this is really cool. I really want to get more involved in this community. People seem healthy. So you get an email, you get put in a group of 12 people. And that group meets once a week on the app, 30 minutes where you just share hey, what am I struggling with? What's going well? Kind of that rose, thorn, bud approach with this group of 12 people. So you get used to just sharing your feelings in a group. Super affordable. It's not therapy. And then with that same group, the next week, you come to the space together. And in the space you share, but you use the hot cold. And then about 3 months into that program, you do a retreat together, whether it's a nature retreat, a meditation retreat, psychedelic retreat, that same group. And so what I want to encourage is a new way. Church is one of the best models of community of all time. Yeah. But for many people, my age, younger, your age, it's I don't vibe with the spirituality and the rules.
Right.
But I'm now missing community. It's okay, well, what if we can build a community around healthy practices for people that can just show up that say hey, I want to be a bit healthier and work on my emotions together, but it's also in a group and it's cool and it's affordable versus traditional therapy. And so I think that combination of weekly group shares, in-person fun sessions, retreat is going to be really powerful. So my vision is that there's 100 of these locations. There's this app you can use daily for your emotional regulation on your own. Then you meet with this group. And then I also want to have a crazy music festival meets Tony Robbins pilgrimage,
right,
in religion. So once a year, 10,000 of the customers from all over the country come together, and it's a 5-day leadership summit with nightlife parties at night that are sober. And so you do that kind of once a year. And so if you are oh, I'm lonely or I want to change my life, but I don't know how, you now have the group, the space, the app, this vacation you can take, this pilgrimage. And that's kind of what I want to build over the next 10 years is that just this massive thing that helps people make behavioral change in a new way.
That's so amazing. So do you have that now? Are those groups there yet? Or
we're going to start next year. So we're going to start with one. We're just going to put out an email to the community, say hey, who's interested in this? And we're just going to test it. It'll be a Zoom, a space and a retreat. And we'll just test it for 2 months and we'll see did it work? Did people like it? And then hopefully we start running 2 at a time, then 4 at a time. That product will take a couple years to build properly, but that's where I see the future of Othership in 5-7 years.
That's amazing. I love it, Robbie. I love it. So again, I want your time. You give me so much. There's so much that you discussed. I love it. I like the fact that the people I'm talking to on the podcast have had addiction issues and substance abuse issues, but we've gotten out of it. But what have we gotten out of it that we're giving back to society and the people around us and the communities we're building? And so far, everybody I've spoken to, it's funny, actually has a community that they've built up in one area or another, almost always by chance. They got into this occurred, this step happened. And I find that the things that people who are in recovery, we've got crazy stories that help lift us up to the next level. We're not scared to, we've done so many things. We're not scared to jump to that next level and try something new. And I think it's amazing. Like I said, like my wife and I, you and I have communicated so many times. I got to get there soon. I want to get there soon. And then it was like, hey, I just got to do this. And it was amazing. So if you're in Toronto, I would definitely say head to Othership, try it out. I actually use the breathing app, which I think is amazing, especially if you're not used to meditation. Definitely try it out. So what would be your one giveaway, one takeaway that you would give people who are listening right now to, it doesn't have to be recovery based. It could be recovery based on their own selves, not just addiction and substance abuse, but people, we all have our own baggage. We all have our own childhood traumas. We have, our parents raised us this way. We have their baggage. What's the one thing you would give our listeners to say, okay, this is what worked for you that was be your biggest takeaway over the years that can help somebody else?
I think there's two. So the first one, it's just in terms of help, is that like social time is the time you're most likely to cause harm. And so if you can trade out, like it's easy, not easy, but it's like in the day, like I'm working out, I'm doing all my thing, great. Where things fall off for me was social time. And so if you can replace that social time, which everyone has, everybody wants to go for dinner and see movies, with something that's healthy, that is a huge step in reducing the amount of harm that you can do to your body. So if you're thinking about like, oh, I'm struggling, if it's during social time, that's like one change you can make that it still be fun. So that's like, for me, that was like the big aha, was just, if I wasn't having that drink out,
right.
Okay. So that's one. And the second one is just like, even if you're struggling, there's something about you that is a superpower. And so mine, was just this like level of intensity and energy and stimulation. And like, I can go and sell things and like, I'm super pumped. And I would just love drugs. Like I just love them so much and still do, to be honest. Like, the thought of it is like, and
it's
so
there. That's why we do it every day.
But what that means is like, I can be an awesome CEO. I can like hire people. I can get them excited. I can build something. I can be a visionary that like brings these ideas in, and I work super hard. And so for me, I was just really good at like building a business in that role. Right. And so what was like a crutch in some ways and like almost killed me is like a power as well. And so just for everybody, now I'm not like, I'm going to try to change and be this like relaxed person. It's impossible. And so I'm just going to be who I am, but I'm going to use those tools. Like everything in your personality is a tool. So what tools can you use for good versus use for harm? And so that's the thing, is like, hey, don't try to change. It's not really possible. Use who you are naturally and find the good from it. And everybody has things in them that can be good. And so
they're good superpowers.
Yeah. And then, like, it's already in you. You're you, and be as you can be, I guess, is the thing, versus, because the advice is like, oh, change, do that, that's tough. But I think it's like, be who you were as a kid and find out what good superpower that is. That's like really inspiring that it's already inside you, I think.
That's amazing. I love it. Find out who you were as a kid and make that your superpower, your amazing superpower. I love it. Robbie, thank you so much for joining me. Stick around in a second. I'm going to log us off, but I want to talk to you for a few minutes when we're done. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to have you back on the show. And I'm definitely going to get down to Othership and hopefully sit next to you, and you'll drive me a little bit harder than I normally do.
Let's do it, man. Awesome. Excited. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon.
You're listening to Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal with Matthew Taub.